District 3 Governor's Councillor Candidate Forum. In a cooperative effort to involve voters in the Governor's Council District 3 race, the Democratic committees of Woburn, Bedford, Billerica, and Burlington are pleased to present this forum. There are 31 cities and towns in District 3, stretching from Woburn to Wellesley to Southborough to Harvard and Chelmsford. This year, there are no Republicans running in the Governor's Councillor seat for District 3, so the Democratic winner of the September 3rd primary election will ultimately win the seat. The Massachusetts Governor's Council is composed of 8 individuals elected from districts. Councillors are elected every 2 years. The council meets weekly to record advice and consent on warrants for the state treasury, pardons and commutations, and recording advice and consent to the gubernatorial appointments such as judges, clerk magistrates, public administrators, members of the Parole Board, Appellate Tax Board, Industrial Accident Board, and Industrial Accident Reviewing Board, notaries, and justices of the peace. This evening's forum will be moderated by Reading Town Moderator Alan Folds. He has served in this office for more than 27 years. He is a member of the Board of Directors of the Massachusetts Moderators Association and is a former president of that board. He has moderated local election debates in Reading, Burlington, and Stoneham. Our forum committee members are all leaders of their town or city Democratic committees. Janice and Larry Cohen, Burlington, Sean Hannigan and Cynthia Lynch, Bedford, Karen Rose, Billerica, and myself, Jennifer Baker-Jones, Woburn. I will now turn it over to Alan Folds, who will introduce the candidates and review the rules of tonight's forum.
Thank you very much. Well, welcome to the debate to the Governor's Council District 3 position. My name is Alan Folds, and I'll be moderating the discussion. We have 2 candidates for the Democratic nomination for the position, and as you heard, there are no Republicans in the race. Marilyn Devaney of Watertown is the incumbent, serving since 1999. She's a former member of the Watertown City Council. Mara Dolan of Concord is the challenger. She is a public defender, working for 15 years in district, superior, and juvenile courts. Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, let's quickly go over the ground rules. Here is how we will proceed. Each candidate will offer a 2-minute opening statement, and we've drawn lots for the order. After that, I will ask the questions of the candidates drawn from the voters of the district. Each candidate has 90 seconds to answer. We'll alternate the candidates for first response. We hope to cover between 10 and 13 questions. Finally, each candidate will give a 2-minute closing statement. We'll use the same order as we did for the opening statements. There will be no rebuttals during the questions, but if a candidate wishes to rebut, the closing statement is the time to do that. In the interest of covering as many subjects as possible, we'll keep a close watch on the time, so frame your answers accordingly. We have 2 timekeepers right down in front here that will be holding up cards letting you know how much time you have left. The yellow card warns you that there are 15 seconds left, and when you see the red card, it's time to stop. Please welcome Karen Rose and Margaret Jones, our timekeepers. Well, if everyone's all set, we will get started. We'll begin with opening statements, and by lot, we have chosen Marilyn Devaney.
Thank you. Before you time me, I just want to say I can't name my endorsements because I don't want to take up my 2 minutes. So I'm Marilyn Devaney, a Governor's Council, proud to be. Thank you for this opportunity. I ran for Governor's Council after seeing my friend beg a judge 8 occasions to keep her abusive boyfriend in jail. The judge told her, "You have wasted my time, wasted the court's time." A week later, my friend was murdered by her abusive boyfriend. I vowed to then be the counsel who fights for justice for you and your families. I fought for reform, and I succeeded. I successfully stopped judicial nominees from donating to governor's councils, the governor and lieutenant governor, right up until a hearing. My work resulted in an executive order banning this corrupt practice. I fought successfully to live stream the governor's council with the support of the ACLU, MassPIRG, and other progressive organizations, so the public could be informed. My extensive reform efforts have made the judiciary better, less biased, and more qualified, giving you a better chance for justice. I am proud to fight against racial, gender, and sexual orientation discrimination in our court. Even though I was inspired by the court's failure resulting in my friend's murder, I remain compassionate about the treatment of criminal offenders. I continue to advocate for commutations, working with our supportive governor. The parole board's composition was in violation of state law and consisted of only law enforcement officers and prosecutors who weren't giving people a second chance, even when it was deserved. I successfully worked to change the parole board into compliance. Now the parole board includes a social worker, forensic psychologist, substance abuse expert. The quality of its decisions regarding re-entry have vastly improved. I'm the only counsel who visits prisons, meeting with inmates who have been wrongly convicted or unfairly sentenced, advocating commutations. My work has increased justice for everyone from every walk of life. I respectfully ask for your vote to continue to use my commitment and experience to work for you and the justice system that works for everyone.
Thank you very much. And now opening statement, Mara Dolan.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Mara Dolan, and I'm running to be your governor's counselor. Thanks so much to the Woburn Public Media Center for hosting this tonight, and for all the local cable stations who are airing this tonight and who will in the future. I had a local cable show myself on CCTV in Concord, and I know the power of local cable. To all my family, my friends, and supporters who are watching, it means a lot to know that you're with me. And special thanks to the Democratic Town Committees of Burlington, Billerica, Bedford, and Woburn for putting together this critically important forum. For those of you who are tuning in to learn about the Governor's Council for the very first time, I thank you most of all. Governor's counselors are the most consequential, least known elected officials in Massachusetts. If you care who our judges are, you need to care who your governor's counselor is. The Governor's Council confirms judges, parole board members, and commutations and pardons among its many duties. I'm a public defender. It's actually been for 17 years, but thank you. Working all across Massachusetts in our district, juvenile, and superior courts. It is time for us to have a governor's counselor who reflects the values of our district. And I can tell you, based on what I see playing out in our courts, we have a lot of catching up to do. In my 17 years as a public defender, I've seen a lot more than one judge make one bad decision. Our racial disparities are worse than the national average, and it's even worse in our juvenile courts. We are taking people into custody for relapse, people who suffer from a substance use disorder, tearing them away from the things that they have built up that can help them in their recovery, and putting them in jail. It's expensive, it doesn't work, and it can make recovery harder. In our juvenile courts, children are not getting the compassionate support that we need. As your governor's counselor, I'll make sure that all of those things have that. The incumbent has served for 25 years. Her imprint is on what I see every day. It's time for change. I'm confident that by the end of this forum, you'll know.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now head into the question portion. Question number 1. Why do you believe the work of the Governor's Council is important? And we'll begin with Marilyn Devaney.
Oh, I think it's very important because the Governor's Council, every person that I vote for as a Governor's Counselor affects you or someone in your family, whether it's parole board, appellate tax board. Talk about people who are injured. I want that judge, when they go before that court, has compassion for that person. We affect everything, the judges, the clerk magistrates. It's so important. I mean, I am so amazed at how we have improved the justice system, because we've had judges, and it still exists. There's racism, and that's why I go out into the prisons and I'm advocating for people who really need to be commutated because they were wrongly sentenced, and that's what it's about. It's about justice, and I'm the only full-time, so I have that time to serve. But this to me is the most important. The Governor's Council is the only body that is the checks and balance for the governor. If we don't vote, that person doesn't get that position. We only vote on people. We don't vote on issues according to the Mass Constitution. It's very important, and I take it very serious, and that's why I'm full-time.
Thank you. Same question, Mara Dolan.
Thank you so much. As a public defender, my clients are among the most vulnerable in Massachusetts and therefore the most impacted by the decisions made by the governor's counselor. That's why I became interested in running for the position. It does matter tremendously who our judges are. And I've told you already some of the things that I've seen. I'm concerned about other issues with judges. Judicial temperament is incredibly important. A lot of judges, frankly, yell. They yell at defendants, they yell at defense counsel, they yell at prosecutors. It's inappropriate and it sets a very bad example and a very bad tone. We clearly need change. And I just need to correct a couple of things that the incumbent has already said that are not correct. She stated that the parole board was not in compliance when she came onto the governor's council and claims responsibility for changing the makeup. That's simply not true. The makeup of the parole board is determined by statute. And I'm happy to provide that statute to anyone who'd like it. She also claims that she's the only governor's counselor who visits prisons. I want to defend the honor of the other governor's counselors who I know for a fact do. Terry Kennedy does. Eileen Duff does. Paul DiPaolo does. I'm sure others do. As your governor's counselor, I will take that statutory responsibility very seriously. I go into prisons all the time to see clients in my work as a public defender. It's very important that we have a governor's counselor who does make those visits, who reports back on what they see, and advocates for positive change.
We'll remind candidates that we will have
Are
time
we
for
able
we
to
will have time
rebut?
for rebuttal at the end. Yes.
At the-
Okay. Our second question. We'll begin with Ms. Dolan. What strengths will you bring to the governor's council?
I have a lot of strengths to bring to the governor's council. I have intimate knowledge of what's happening in our courts and how the issues are playing out every day and the impact that they have on people's lives. That's critical. I'm running to be the first public defender on the governor's council. Since the Supreme Court established the right to counsel in 1963 for people who couldn't afford to hire their own attorney, we've had 52 governor's counselors, but not a single one has been a full-time public defender. And I'll tell you why that matters. As a public defender, as a defense attorney, I have conversations with my clients. I get to understand them. I know who they are. I know what their lives are like. I know the challenges that they face. If you have never had that experience, you can't possibly understand the people who are appearing before you. So as your governor's counselor, I won't just vet and vote on nominees. I will share my experience with those nominees so that they are able to see the things that I can see. It's critically important that we have that perspective, and it's terrible that it is so long overdue.
And the same question, Ms. Devaney.
Would you repeat
Oh,
the
sure.
question?
Yeah. What strengths will you bring to the governor's council?
My experience, my commitment, my understanding of doing this for 25 years. I'm the only one that vets and meets with every nominee. I have met with over 1,000. I'm sure that some of the councilors, they do meet with people, but I have met with all of them. And I think that's important because I'm just not going to come in once a week and come to a hearing and vote. I want to know that whole person. That's what I'm bringing. I think it's important to be able to have that time to go to parole board hearings, to go to, I also go to, they have graduations for people that are addicted. I'm very involved with the drug problem. So that's the thing. But I would like to say that the Committee for Public Counsel will confirm that Mara Dolan is not a public defender. She's a private attorney. And I know that my people on the council have gone out to the prisons. There's no question, but I go on a regular basis. That is the difference. And as far as the talking about the parole board has statutes. It was in violation, and I got the governor to put the people for the diversity that it calls for.
Okay, thank you. Next question, and we'll begin with Marilyn on this. In your view, what qualities do you look for in judicial candidates?
Is it, it's me all the time first?
No, we've just,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
it's my turn?
Yes.
Okay, fine. What I look for, besides experience, I look for qualifications, but you know what? If they don't have compassion, then I'm not going to vote for them. I told you why I ran. And that's why I ran, because what that judge did, I don't want any judge to do that to anyone else, and it caused her death. We have to have compassion. They have to have understanding. They have to not have bias for gender, for anything. And that's what I look for. You know, we don't have a crystal ball. Some people can fool you and disappoint you. But the main thing is, when I meet with them for hours because we don't have anyone working for us. So it's up to me. So this is not a part-time job, not a second job. Believe it or not, there's a law that lets attorneys that are on the council appear before the judges they vote on. I have no conflict of interest. I'm not voting for fellow attorneys. I think it's important that we have that separation. I'm looking at that person representing you. I'm not representing anyone else. But they have to have all of those qualifications, and especially compassion, and believe in second chances.
Okay, again, I'll repeat the question. In your view, what qualities do you look for in judicial candidates? This is Tamara.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, judicial temperament is incredibly important. We are clearly not screening sufficiently enough for that. We're also not screening sufficiently to make sure that all nominees are anti-racist. And as your governor's counselor, I will do that. Also make sure all nominees understand the science of addiction and know how to work to support recovery. And I want to spend the bulk of my time talking about something incredibly important. I'll make sure all nominees are pro-choice. Abortion is on the ballot, and it's on the ballot in this race too. The incumbent voted to confirm an anti-choice judge to our superior courts just weeks after Roe versus Wade was overturned. And I want you to understand what happened. This was a nominee who had repeatedly endorsed and spent money contributing to anti-choice organizations. She was asked repeatedly if she supports the right to choose. Repeatedly, she refused to say that she would. One of the other governor's counselors said that her answers were worthy of Brett Kavanaugh. When the council reconvened to vote on the nomination, that counselor, Terry Kennedy, stood up and said, "This is a litmus test for me." And he was so concerned about her refusal to say that she supported the right to choose that he called her personally to ask her if she would at least recuse herself on abortion cases, and she would not say that she would. And so he said because of that, he would vote no. Immediately after he said that, the incumbent, my opponent, said, and I quote, "Please send us more." The record is clear. The video is available on my YouTube channel. You can find it going to my website, maradolan.com, which links to YouTube. I will make sure all nominees are pro-choice before I vote yes.
All right, we'll segues into our next question. And this begins with Mara Dolan. Given the national discussion about abortion access, what role will the Governor's Council have in maintaining the right to abortion as health care in Massachusetts?
The Governor's Council plays an incredibly important in protecting your right to choose and reproductive rights in Massachusetts. The incumbent recently posted on social media that the Governor's Council doesn't really have anything to do with abortion except for Superior Court. That's simply not true. There is a line of cases going back for centuries which involve the Supreme Judicial Court and our courts of appeals. In Massachusetts today, if someone is under the age of 16, they must have the consent of a parent or an adult guardian to get an abortion. If not, they have only one area of recourse, and that's consent of a Superior Court judge. That's why it was so concerning when the incumbent voted to confirm an anti-choice Superior Court judge. In a time when our federal courts are taking away our rights, we've got to make sure that our state courts uphold them. Massachusetts must continue to lead on abortion access and reproductive rights. As your governor's counselor, I will make sure that I uphold all the rights that were established before me. I was living in Massachusetts at the age of 19 when I had an unplanned pregnancy. The laws of Massachusetts made my life possible. They made my education possible. They made my work possible. And they made it possible for me to become a mother and be the kind of mother that I wanted to be when the time was right. I will use everything in my power as your governor's counselor to make sure that those rights are continued.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. Given the national discussion about abortion access, what role will the Governor's Council have in maintaining the right to abortion as health care in Massachusetts? Marilyn Devaney?
We are not legislators. We vote on people. We vote on all the members that you have said of all those committees. And that's what we do, and judges in all of those positions. So to vote, to run on reproductive rights it's not the right office. We're not legislators. When she ran for Senate, that was her platform. But it's important to know what the duties are of the council. And that is not one of them. And I'd like to say that any lawyer knows Canon 2 requires any judge who has a bias to recuse themselves. So when I voted on that person for the Superior Court, which 5 did, including a former judge, because she was so exceptional, she had compassion for people who didn't have a lawyer, and she represented them. I got a lot of calls. She got a lot of awards. And that's why I said what I did, that we need more people with compassion. And she will, by Canon 2, recuse herself. We all know that, and lawyers should know that. But I'm saying that this is being misrepresented because it's legislators that vote on abortion. We don't. But I think it's something that we all should be mindful of, but we are not legislators.
All right, our next question is a little long. I'm going to explain it before I ask the question. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts enforces a statute that is referred to as the Parental Consent Abortion Law or the Judicial Bypass Law. Simply stated, this law requires any minor under age 16 to have one parent's consent to have an abortion, or she must obtain a judicial bypass from a judge. The judge does not decide if the minor can have the abortion, but if she was mature enough to make her own decision about her pregnancy. What qualities would you expect a Superior Court judge to demonstrate when reviewing a case presented under the Judicial Bypass Law? And we begin with Ms. Devaney.
I would say that, first of all, they would have to know the condition of this child under 15 years and younger to know what the mental state is besides the physical. This isn't an easy question to answer, because there are children that are disabled. There are people in hospitals that are raped. And, and sometimes the child is carrying what isn't even, a full body, maybe not a brain or whatever. There are a lot of different circumstances that I think that judge has to look into to make that decision. And I think it has to be, if this child is, what their condition is, every aspect of that child's life and what they have gone through. It's psychological, it's physical, it's mental. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not one to be able to get into all of that, but I think that it is a very serious decision of any judge. And that's why I'm so glad that Canon 2, that anyone who has a bias will recuse themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. And same question?
Yes,
Mara.
this is not a difficult question to answer. The decision on whether to terminate a pregnancy is one that should be made between a patient and their doctor, period. End of discussion. So I would ask all Superior Court nominees if they would respect the decision that had been made between a patient and a doctor. End of discussion.
Okay. Our sixth question. There is a lot of debate about the science of juvenile brain development and how it should factor into sentencing decisions for juvenile offenders. What considerations would you make when reviewing a candidate for juvenile court, and why? And we'll begin with Mara Dolan.
Thank you. This is an incredibly important question, and I thank you for asking it. I have represented hundreds and hundreds of children in our juvenile courts, and I was incredibly proud of the Supreme Judicial Court, which recently found that a sentence of life without the possibility of parole would be unconstitutional for someone under the age of 18. The SJC cited the science of brain development, and they cited 4 specific factors in which children and emerging adults, that would be people between the ages of 18 and 25, are different from fully developed adults. They have a lack of impulse control. They are more prone to risk-taking. They are more susceptible to peer influence, but they do have a greater capacity for change. It's critically important that all judges respect the science of brain development. Now, the incumbent, my opponent, is on the record, and you can see this on my YouTube channel, saying recently that she rejects the science of brain development. She called it just pages in a book that she wished they would tear out. I do not reject the science of brain development or any other science, and I would expect all nominees to do the same. She also recently asked a juvenile court nominee how she felt about the law and the science of brain development. It was a completely inappropriate question. Judges are bound to follow the law. She also said she doesn't support raising the age of juvenile court jurisdiction. I do, for all the reasons that I've just cited. And it's been proven to reduce recidivism, reduce crime, and improve public safety. Thank you.
Okay, same question, Marilyn.
I have not made a public statement or gone to the courts and said, I believe this. I just said that I haven't really, it hasn't been proven to me. And I'd like to see if a 20-year-old is different than a 21-year-old. The brain, I do believe that the brain develops as we go along, but I just said that sometimes book knowledge is not always correct. And as far as the juveniles, I think that I have seen how many come through for the juvenile court, and most of them that come through, the nominees and the sitting judges, say that they are overworked in the juvenile court to have more, and most of them consider the age that they just increased is sufficient. I'm not positive about how I feel about increasing it. I don't know. I'm concerned about that we have young people going into schools and killing children and teachers. And how do we deal with that? Do we have, we should really have some kind of way to know the development of the brain of the individual. That I really have not really fully, that was an opinion that I said, and she followed it, and she's showing it everywhere. But I'd like it really to see more evidence of it. The
Okay.
brain isn't developed till 25. I had 4 children, and I chose 4 children, and I was 25.
Okay.
My brain was developed. I guess that's why I'm thinking.
Okay,
I don't
you're
know.
out of time?
I really don't know.
Okay, next question. How would you remove your personal political bias from consideration of a candidate to be judged? It would begin with this.
Would you say that again?
Sure. How would you remove your personal political bias from consideration of a candidate to be judged?
How would I know that? You mean someone that's before me? How would I know that they're prejudiced?
No, how would you remove your political bias?
My bias?
Yes.
Oh, I have no bias. I think the one thing that I'm proud of, that I have brought so many diverse people in different positions, especially judges that, I vote historically. I voted for in the Supreme Judicial Court, the first Black Chief Justice, the first woman Black justice, the first openly gay, the first Asian, the first Black woman that was on. I am for diversity, so I don't understand the bias of your question at all. I don't see that. I mean, I have no bias. I mean, that's the way I grew up. And that's my mother and father were Italian immigrants. It wasn't easy, and they weren't treated very well, but they were the most patriotic, and they taught me to be respectful of everyone. And that's how I've grown up. I really don't understand bias, and I'm very upset with what's happening in our country, the bias that's going on, and in the 3 wars that are going on. It is bias. That's bias to me, and it's prejudice.
Okay, thank you. Same question, Mara Dolan.
Thank you. I also don't have bias. I do have values, however. I value knowledge. I value experience. I value temperament. I value the ability to work well with others. I was concerned, and there was a relatively recent vote for a parole board nominee, James Kelcourse, who was at the time a sitting Republican state legislator. The incumbent voted against him. I don't know why. I don't know whether it was because he was a Republican sitting state legislator, but since he was confirmed by the other members of the Governor's Council, he's turned out to be a really wonderful parole board member. I am told that he has one of, if not the highest release rates. So I think it's really important. I'm glad you asked this question. I do think we need to judge people equally. I also grew up dealing with discrimination. My father came out as gay in the early 1970s when being gay was considered a mental illness and against the law. I was a gay rights advocate from the time I was 12 years old. And I remember people making biased, prejudicial, homophobic remarks. And even at that young age, I would stand up for him and I would stand up for his community. It's a value that I continue to hold and will always hold as your governor's counselor.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What factors will you be considering when you offer consent and advice on a person's pardon or commutation? And what qualities would you prioritize? It would begin with Mara Dolan.
Thank you so much. The purpose of a pardon is to relieve someone of the burden of their conviction. With a commutation, it says that the sentence served to that point has been sufficient and they can be released. The incumbent has two votes that I'm really concerned about that I want to draw your attention to. One was Deanne Hamilton. She was recommended for commutation. She had a very difficult childhood and she got involved with someone who was involved with drugs and she ended up being convicted of a drug crime. She was recommended for a commutation and the incumbent voted against it, and even at the time said that she was not in prison, which of course she was, and said that she was better off there. Fortunately, the other governor's councils voted for the commutation. She was released and she's doing very well today. The other one I want to draw your attention to is Thomas Schoolcraft. He was a young man when he committed a series of burglaries. He was very remorseful and he confessed. He was sentenced and he later earned a master's in criminal justice. When he wanted to work with the very kinds of kids that he had once been, his conviction made it impossible for him to find a job. So he applied for a pardon. He was recommended for one. The incumbent, my opponent, voted against it, saying she didn't believe that his being young when he committed those crimes made a difference. I do. With both those cases, I would have voted for the commutation and the pardon. Those are the values that I have.
Okay, thank you. Same question, Ms. Devaney.
Oh, she's going back, I don't know, 20 years or whatever. 25 years I voted against too. And to go back on that, I listened to the district attorney, and I'm very glad that they did well, but they needed more time, and they weren't going to be behind prison. She was going to be in a different type of situation, but I'm not going to go back on that, and I don't think we should be bringing up names like that because they have gone on with their lives. And as far as that representative that I voted on, I voted against him because he had been running for everything you could make up, and he didn't have what we need on the parole board. He was a representative, and he had no knowledge. He had never gone to a parole board hearing. In 8 years in the legislation, he has never filed one thing, not even connected at all with criminal justice or anything. And he came in, I couldn't believe it. When he came in, I said, how did you decide on running want to be appointed to a parole board? He says, well, I saw two openings and I called two of the counselors and they said they would support me. They got him on in 2 weeks. He was sitting up at that board, and they have really nurtured him, and he's coming along well. And you know what? They all have highest numbers of parole. I'm so proud of all of them, and so I'm glad that he's learned, and
Okay.
he is serving with the best that we have.
Okay,
And
thank you
that's
very
it.
much. Okay, next question. What is your view on the current makeup of the judiciary, and what role do you play in ensuring a diverse judiciary? We'll begin with Marilyn.
Well, I think I have. I think I just said how it was historic on the Supreme Judicial Court. And just interesting, at one time, I voted historically, we had 5 women. That was the majority that we've ever had before. And not only that, but we didn't have Black members. We didn't have someone that was to be the Chief Justice. These are the things that I have. I can remember we had someone that was going to be a judge, a Black man. And we had people come in, because this is a former counselor, and he got his legislators come in to oppose it because they said he doesn't live in our district, and we want someone in our district. And you know what I said? I said, you need a judge that reflects the people who come into the court. And I only won that by one vote, and he has been one of the best in the Superior Court. So I'm saying that you don't have to live in that district. You have to have the heart, the compassion, the knowledge, but we need diversity. We need more Asians, and I have voted for people with Indian background who are excellent. And I don't vote for them because of that, but we need diversity. We need people who can speak Spanish and in other things besides their qualifications, but we do need diversity, and we need much more.
Thank you very
We
much.
haven't reached that point that we can say we've done enough.
Okay. Mara, same question.
Thank you so much. It's a really important question. As I've said, I'm working in our courts regularly, and I see what the bench looks like. It's overwhelmingly white. It's overwhelmingly male. There are a lot of wonderful white male judges out there, don't get me wrong, but it is incredibly important that we have different viewpoints, people from all walks of life. The incumbent has not done enough to make this happen, and I'm particularly concerned about a recent nominee for Housing Court. He was nominated, if confirmed, which he fortunately was. He became only the second Black Housing Court judge in all of Massachusetts history. At the time of his hearing, not only did the incumbent, my opponent, vote against him, and by the way, he was extremely well qualified. One of the counselors said that they had never seen so many judges come in to testify on behalf of a nominee, as in this case. She not only voted against him, she told Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, who presides over hearings of the Governor's Council, that if the nomination were to go forward, that she and the governor would be humiliated by the nomination. This is clearly not someone who is championing diversity. As your governor's counselor, I will. I find that conduct disgraceful.
Okay, our next question. We'll begin with Mara Dolan for this. Walk us through your process for reviewing judicial candidates.
It will be quite thorough. I do believe it is really important to meet with every nominee, to get to know them as a person, to find out about their background, to talk to people that they work with, to find out about how well they work with others, to look at what they've done in their own lives, in their own professional lives to increase diversity, to fight racism, to stand up for civil rights, for women's rights, for juvenile rights. So it will be a very thorough process. I absolutely will meet with every single nominee and have lengthy discussions with them to make sure that I really understand them and their values and the kind of judge that they would be.
Okay, and Ms. Devaney?
Yeah,
Devaney?
that housing that I voted against, there's an organization that advocate for people who are being wrongly treated in court, and there was many of these elderly, especially elderly women alone, that had this man before, that had dealt with him as a lawyer, and that's why I voted for them. And so I do a thorough job about that. I'm just curious why why my opponent has never once come to a hearing to learn about what we do. And why doesn't she send a letter if she's concerned about judges tell us about it? Why doesn't she tell us about paroles or commutations that she wants? Never heard a thing. She's never come. And this is the second time around. And I think she should learn what the duties are. So I can explain every reason why I voted, but that housing authority, man, he has grown, but these people have been hurt. One of them was thrown out of her house and homeless in the street. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I'm just saying that when I investigate, it's thorough. And that's why that organization is working to help these people that have been thrown out of their house wrongly. And that's what he had that record. And maybe it was earlier, and maybe he corrected himself, but it was there on the record.
Okay, our next question. Are there any specific positions a judicial candidate could take that you would consider automatically disqualifying? And how would you handle the situation?
Something that he...
Any specific positions that a judicial candidate could take that you would consider automatically disqualifying?
I've never had anyone come before me in 25 years that I could say that that they had an absolute bias against someone or something or ethnic group. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the question is there anything? If you're thinking there isn't, that could be your answer.
I just
Yes.
don't understand that.
Well, is there anything that they could say to you that you would say that just disqualifies?
If they said
Person.
something about an ethnic group, if they said anything, I'm very concerned too that I served on the Commission on Disabilities for 22 years. And I look for judges because I want them to understand. I don't want them to have a bias. If someone comes before them, that whatever the disability, whatever, if it's a child with autism, whatever, I want them to understand. Maybe that's what you're talking about, that they, if they don't have a knowledge and they might be biased and they might mistreat that person who comes before them. Then if I heard anything that they said, and when I meet with them for 2 or 3 hours, when I question them, no, I would never consider anyone who had a bias against anyone. That's the problem in the judicial system now, that we have Black people that have been wrongly accused and they're serving, and I'm going to fight to get them their commutations. That's the prejudice, I guess. But you know what? Again, we don't have a crystal ball. So I don't know if that person really has a bias because it's not coming through.
Okay.
You know?
Let me just repeat it just so you understand. Are there any specific positions a judicial candidate could take that you would consider automatically disqualifying? And how would you handle the situation?
Sure, there are. Excuse me. And in my 17 years as a public defender, I've gotten to be a pretty good read of character. So I don't feel that there isn't anything that will come through. I'll be able to tell. Certainly someone being anti-choice, not supporting the right to choose would be a deal breaker for me. Someone who is not ready, willing, and able to fight systemic racism would be a deal breaker for me. Bias would be a deal breaker for me. Lack of experience. I've seen people confirmed who are sitting on our criminal courts presiding who have no criminal experience. That concerns me tremendously. And so I would have a great deal of difficulty confirming someone for one of those positions if they didn't have the experience that they needed in order to be a good judge.
Okay, thank you. Question 12. What is your vision for the staffing of a parole board so that it reflects the community? And we'll begin with Mara Dolan.
Yes, we do need more diversity on the parole board. I would like to see someone formerly incarcerated serving on the parole board. We've got a lot of folks who are serving sentences longer than they need to. And so it's really important that our parole board members are capable of recognizing when someone is ready to be released. We need a parole board that moves more quickly. I know there are some folks who believe that the parole board should be expanded, and I'm one of them, because I think, frankly, that the workload is very high, and we could move things along more quickly. I think that it's important for folks to have, as I stated earlier, the makeup of the parole board is determined by statute. So the law requires us to have a diversity of experience, people with a mental health background, people with a substance abuse background, so that we get that perspective. But I do hope that we have more diversity on the parole board, and as your governor's counselor, I'll advocate for that.
Okay, and I'll just repeat the question. What is your vision for the staffing of a parole board so that it reflects the community?
Well, I stand on my record. When I first got elected, there were police officers and former police officers and prosecutors. And so I went to the governor. I says, this is in violation of the mandate. And so it took a while, but we've got there. Now, I am working very hard to expand the parole board to 9. We only have 7 members, and they're worked right down to the bone. They have to go from, from the Cape to the western part of the state, and it isn't given us. I'm very concerned because we're not having the lifer hearings that we deserve to have. And we're not having the pardons that we should be having. And it's because they're so overworked. If we could have 2 more people to go out in the western part of the state, then we could have more hearings for lifers and for pardons. And that's what I'm looking for. So I'm hoping that will happen. And so I'm really working very hard on that. And you know what? I would love to see someone that has been a prisoner, had been an inmate, to be on the board. I know William, God bless him, and he would be wonderful. 33 years, life in prison without parole, a black man, and he wasn't even in the room when his friend killed someone. He didn't even know it. That's the kind of person who has the understanding that we should have on. But we need 2 more people, and I'm going to keep fighting for it, and we're going to do it this year, I hope. And I think the governor is, I'm just over the moon working with this governor because she's so supportive of all the things I want to do with commutation and pardons. But
Okay,
I think we're going to do it. We have to do it if we're going to have justice.
Okay, thank you very much. For the final question, we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to ask you each the same question. What qualities do you respect in your opponent? And we'll begin with Marilyn.
Honesty, because she's not a public defender and she keeps saying it. And in the Committee for Public Counsel said she's not. And you know what it's like? It's like a substitute teacher saying that she's a public school teacher. And it's not fair and it's not right. I want someone who's going to be committed. My opponent
I will
was
repeat-
on two
Yeah,
was
this is
on
not-
2 ballots the same day in Concord and Watertown.
Can I just
She
repeat the
was
question to
on-
make sure you understood it? The question what qualities do you respect?
The
in your
qualities
opponent?
I think I want to be that would be committed, not looking for the next step to run for something else, to really commit, to know how important this job is because it affects people, and everything you vote on is going to be affecting someone's life. And so the Industrial Accident Board, I mean, people don't even talk about that. If you're an injured worker, I want that compassionate judge to help that person put food on the table. That's the thing. I want someone compassionate. I want someone dedicated, that to give the time, that will meet with the people, that will have, I'm full-time, so I guess I'm kind of biased. I really think being full-time is all of it because it's not a part-time job, and I believe it deserves that. So I think compassion, I think knowledge, experience, and you don't, in being a lawyer, lawyers vote for lawyers, and I've seen it through the years. So
Okay, I will
I have no
I'll
bias.
ask the same question to Mara Dolan.
Yes.
What qualities do you respect in your opponent?
Yes, that was the question. What qualities do you respect in your opponent? So I'm going to answer that question, but I'm also going to respond to the things that she said about me. I respect the fact that she cares a lot about the work of the Governor's Council, and I've seen her over the years go to a lot of events to talk about the work of the Governor's Council to help educate people. That's incredibly important. That's what I'm doing in my campaign. But now I want to address some of the things that she said about me. It's ludicrous to suggest that I'm not a public defender. Call Committee for Public Counsel Services, and they'll tell you that's what I do. And the charge that she's made this charge before. This is what she does. Every single time she has an opponent and they talk about her record, she says that they are not telling the truth, but they were, just as I am. She also makes false accusations against her opponents. She's done it against them. She's doing it about me. She's doing it to me. But I'll tell you, no one received a lower blow than Charlie Shapiro. There was a letter sent to the Metro West Daily News claiming false accusations that he'd shown up at a Governor's Council meeting, distributed literature, said negative things about the incumbent to interns. None of that was true. That letter was signed by other members of the Governor's Council. She took that letter, she printed it on campaign letterhead, and she distributed it as campaign literature. If you ask Governor's Councilor Eileen Duff, she'll tell you she didn't sign the letter. If you ask Terry Kennedy, he'll tell you he didn't sign the letter. If you ask Jenny Casey, she'll tell you that she never saw the letter. That was a false statement. It's a level of deception that tells you everything you need to know about her character and why she should not be serving on the Governor's Council.
Okay, now next we are moving to closing statements. But before we do that, I will make a slight change. After you each make your 2-minute closing statements, I will give you each 1 minute extra to respond to anything that you've heard throughout the night. So we'll begin with closing statements. 2 minutes. We'll begin with Marilyn Devaney.
I had the
2 minutes closing statement.
I had first. Okay.
Yes.
My entire career has been about reform. I promised change when I ran for governor's council. I delivered. I'm the only full-time member, only one who vets and meets with every single nominee, over 1,000, from the Supreme Judicial Court to the Industrial Accident Board. In 25 years, I've been absent once when my husband died. I'm especially proud to have voted for many historic firsts, and I think I've mentioned all those in the Supreme Judicial Court. We can't go back to the bad days before my reforms, when decisions were made behind closed doors, when a judicial nominee did not disclose a family member was on the governor's council, or when nominees could donate to the councilors right up to the moment of their hearing. My opponent claims she's a lifelong Democrat. She's been enrolled for many years, officially on her voting record. And in 2000, she voted for a Republican president. She's an anti-abortion president, and she claims she would never vote for an anti-abortion judge. She claims she's a public defender. If you call the Council for Public Counsel, they'll tell you that she's not a public defender. She's self-employed, private attorney. And she does go to court, the Board of Overseers, and she has cases with attorneys, for attorneys who, I don't know, against attorneys. I have been endorsed, I can't say all my endorsements, but I've been endorsed by 3 of my former opponents. But SEIU NAGE, in their endorsement, said that I've been a long supporter, long-time strong ally to the labor movement in Massachusetts and working families across the communities. And that's what I am about. Those are the people that I see that I want on the courts and in the boards that care about families and care about people's needs. I'm asking you to look at my accomplishments, my record of success in justice reform. It seems like my opponent, it keeps running for different things, and I only want to be a governor's council. I have the experience, I have the commitment, I know the job. And as I said, she's never come to the hearings. She's never sent us anything about any of her concerns about judges or even about paroles or commutations. I'm doing it, and I'm going to continue to go out into the prisons, and I'm going to get commutations for these people.
We'll now move on to the
Thank you very
yes,
much.
Thank you. Mara Dolan, final closing statements?
There is no way that 3 of my opponents, former opponents, endorsed her. She didn't name any names. I challenge her to do that. There is no way that that happened. She said earlier that she can't list her endorsements because it would take too long. That's simply not true. These are my endorsements, and I earned every single one of them. She's claimed false endorsements in the past. 2 years ago, she claimed Congressman Jim McGovern endorsed her. She wasn't true. She claimed that Democratic candidate for auditor Chris Dempsey endorsed her. Wasn't true. I frankly don't understand how she can run and ask people to vote for her after that record of deception. And I'm reminded of something that happened when a judicial nominee lied on their application. She said she could never vote for someone who lied on their application. Yet that is exactly what she is asking voters to do. I've been endorsed by State Auditor Diana DeZoglio, Congressman Seth Moulton, 5 state senators, Senator Mike Barrett, Will Brownsberger, Jamie Eldridge, Cindy Friedman, Becca Rausch, and reproductive rights pioneer and champion, former Newton Senator Lois Pines, 13 state reps, including House Majority Leader Mike Moran and Assistant Majority Leader Alice Peisch, labor unions, including the State Police Association of Massachusetts, the IBEW Local 103, the Carpenters and Joiners, the Ironworkers, the Plumbers and Gas Fitters, local Democratic organizations. Special shout out to the Billerica Democratic Town Committee. I'm very proud of your endorsement. Also endorsed by the Acton and Stowe Democratic Town Committees, Our Revolution Concord, Brookline PAC, Woburn Welcomes, Harvard University Professor of Constitutional Law Emeritus Larry Tribe, Danielle Allen, and I have many more that I'm looking forward to announcing. Why do I have so many endorsements? Why am I the most endorsed Democratic primary challenger in Massachusetts in this or in any year that anyone can think of? Because they know me. They know the work that needs to be done, and they trust me to deliver. Thank you to everyone who's learning about the Governor's Council for the first time. Please make sure that you vote on or before the September 3rd primary. So much is at stake. Thank you so much.
Okay, and I'm going to give you each 1 minute to respond to anything that you would like to respond to throughout the evening. We'll begin with Marilyn
Well,
Petito.
I'd like to talk about the endorsements. I had a list of prior endorsements and I made a mistake. I had 3 that I did not call and I got it printed with the wrong list. And so I did apologize. That was a mistake. And we all make mistakes. But as far as my endorsements, and we don't have time because I know we're timed, but I am proud from Congressman, Lynch to Peter Gattusian to Steve Tolman to Warren. I have a lot, and that's not what I'm going to go through. I will have that later and take it out in public, and you can all see it. But what I want to talk about is that my accomplishments, and I'm asking you to continue for justice reform and to respect my accomplishments. My opponent has never, ever come to a hearing, she is misleading people about what we do.
Okay, time to
And
wrap it up.
I hope that you'll understand that. And I'm very proud of what I've done. And I want to continue because there's so much more work. And I'm working with a wonderful governor. And she's supporting me to get more pardons, more commutations. There's people in the prison that shouldn't be there. And I want to
Okay, you want to wrap it up?
identify them so that they can be released. So that's what I'm about. And so, it's easy to say whatever you do, the promises, but I have the accomplishments to show you. And I made the changes, I made reforms, and I'm proud of them.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I'm asking respectfully for your vote.
Okay,
Thank you so much for this forum.
Mara Dolan?
I do want to respond. She has not been endorsed by Steve Tolman and Warren Tolman. And she needs to be reminded that lying about endorsements is not only unethical, it is against the law in Massachusetts. So I strongly advise her not to persist in claiming endorsements that she doesn't have. Our democracy depends on an informed electorate being able to vote their conscience. Lying to voters is damaging to our democracy and must not be tolerated. All of the people who've endorsed me know that I'm telling you the truth. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you so much.
Stephen
Thank
told
you.
me, endorsed me at the
We have
State
run out
House.
of time. In closing, I thank both candidates, Marilyn Petito Devaney and Mara Dolan, for sharing their vision with the people of the 3rd District. Thank you, Jennifer Baker-Jones and your committee. And finally, thank you to the staff and volunteers at Woburn Public Media. Remember, primary election day is Tuesday, September 3rd, the day after Labor Day. Here's your chance to have a direct say in how the state judiciary decisions are made. Make sure you take advantage of that right and responsibility. Thank you for watching.
Thank you all.
Thank you.